Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and comrades, I hope you're doing Ooh, excuse me. I'll start again. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and comrades, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. This is Kenya Revolutionary for another quick session. I'm not going to stay long because I know you are still enjoying your holidays and you're go shago, just chilling at home, whatever the case is. So I'll get right into the mix today. The topic at hand today is Musalia Mudavadi and Ruto are playing with fire when it comes to the constitution. Basically, Musalia Mudavadi came out and is trying to hint, testing the waters, trying Kenyans to see or get a reaction of Kenyans regarding this issue. The idea of, we might not have an elections. As you heard him, I don't know if you heard his clip today. He was speaking. Excuse me. He was speaking somewhere where he made it very clear that we might not have elections 2027. I'll repeat, Musalia Mudavadi, who I keep on telling you, is the government spokesperson of this Ruto administration, okay, and the spokesperson for the ruling political elites of Kenya, came out and said that we might not even have an election in 2027 because we are acting outside of the constitution. I know most of you are asking yourself, what does it mean? How are we operating outside the constitution? Why are we not? I'll explain very quickly. And he actually explained in his speech, if you listen to Musalia Mudavadi today. But anyway, before I get started, ladies and gentlemen, we have to get through the formalities. If this is your first time in this channel, my name is Kenya Revolutionary. I talk about Kenyan politics and world politics as it relates to Kenya. So if you like that kind of content, please do not hesitate. Subscribe, share, like, comment, and put the notification on so every time I come in, you will always find me here. And if you've already subscribed, you know the first order of business is to do what? Is to hit that like button. And make sure that notification bell is on. So every time I come in, you can always find me here. You can join me on the chat. You can join me in the studio or whatever the case is. Let's get it on. So Musalia Mudavadi, Musalia Mudamba, he's not stopping. He's trying to, walk Kenyans through this process, which might happen. Listen, he came out and said that, there's several things are happening here. He's speaking to Kenyans in general and is also trying to pander to the Raila faithful, those who might be, thought Raila died fighting for Kenyans, by mentioning the framework or the process of the NADCO report that you were working on. Remember, this whole broad-based thing, even though it was birthed after the chaos and the carnage that took place that, resulted into a lot of Gen Zs losing their lives and abductions, extrajudicial killings. You know the drill, okay? But remember, I kept on telling you, if you've listened to my videos previously, this was a ploy by the Raila faction of the political elites to force Ruto's hand to acquiesce to their demands. And they got it. Because remember, when this whole thing started after the elections, remember the whole process. Let me just walk you back real quick. I won't take much of your time. I'm just walking you through so you can understand where we are. And we shall delve with why this whole thing is an indication that Ruto's administration is desperate and probably is getting intelligence that, hey, you are going home. Unaenda kushindwa elections. That's flat out. You're going to lose. Let me explain to you something very quickly. So listen, the NADCO report, okay, remember NADCO? It's essentially the BBI. I kept on telling you this. Kenya is being ruled by this criminal elite, the political class, who pretend to be our leaders. They position themselves as tribal chieftains, and they create this perception among the population that a leader who hails from a certain community, for example, Ruto, is the head of the Kalenjin. So he speaks for all the Kalenjin nation. Raila speaks for the Luo nation, now deceased. Uhuru speaks for Kikuyu nation. Kalonzo speaks for the Kamba nation, so forth, so forth, okay? And the perception is, if Raila is in government, that means the Luo nation shall benefit from him being in government. If Ruto is the president, that means the Kalenjin shall benefit from him being in government. If Kalonzo is in government, the Kamba shall be the beneficiary of the perks you get when you're in government. In practice, it's a fallacy. It's not true. The only people who benefit from these deals are these very top tribal chieftains who are corrupt to the core. Now, every electioneering year, we know the pattern of events. We head to elections, the most unpopular party loses, but they rig themselves. Then they tell you, go to the judiciary, knowing very well they are in control of the judiciary. You go up there, you still lose. Then people go to Mandamano. A lot of people die. Then they pretend that, oh, you know what? We have decided to sit down for the sake of peace. Let's work out something so that our country can have peace. Everybody can be happy. And they work out a national, an arrangement where both factions of these corrupt political tribal elites, want to benefit from the arrangement, and they want to codify that by making it law, binding, bind it in contract and make it law. This whole agreement that they have in their private offices, air-conditioned offices, okay? That's how they do it. So these guys, they sat down and they decided, you know what? Instead of us fighting for these positions every time we have electioneering year, electoral process, elections, okay? Instead of, to avert any chaos that shall bring unnecessary international scrutiny to look into our books and see the deep dirt that's lying in the underlying problem in Kenya, which is corruption and manipulation and all that stuff. Let's work out an agreement that even if one faction loses, they still will benefit from the system by having a certain seat. That's why they came up with this BBI, Bridges to Nowhere. Remember it? It was introduced by Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta. Amos Wako and the rest were the people who are behind this whole arrangement, okay? But again, we remember, BBI failed because it was not a what? A people initiative. This was the executive trying to push an agenda to amend the constitution to benefit not only the executive, but the political class as a whole. So it was struck down by the courts. Okay? But they did not stop there. They always want this. So they waited to the next elections, which was 2022. Ruto won again, not again, but, for the first time, whatever the case is. We can argue about who really won. That's an argument for another day, but we're past that. Anyways, Raila, again, 5 months after the elections, after the Supreme Court decided that, hey, upheld the victory of the IBC decision to declare Ruto the president, the winner, Raila went to the streets. Then we know the normal shenanigans. Huku na pale, sijui ya panel, let's sit down and talk, all these talks and nonsense. Remember that? All right. So the talk started. The first batch of, talks failed. Then the second one with Wakina Cheruyot and Kalonzo Musyoka came and drafted, and they came up with a report with a 10-point agenda. Remember that? Yes. So this 10-point agenda, they started enacting it. They started doing what? Codifying it. They started doing what? They wanted to make it law, which they passed it illegally. That's why we had that IEBC amendment bill, which became law, which was passed illegally, but it is law to this day, leading up to 2027 elections. Okay? That was a result of what? This whole NADCO 10-point arrangement between Ruto, Raila, Uhuru. Don't think that Uhuru is not part of it. He's very much part of it. Very much. But anyway, and I reminded you guys, remember, Raila started hinting at this idea that we should review the Constitution. We should review the Constitution. We should review the Constitution. This Constitution is not working for us. We should review this Constitution. We should review this Constitution. And we started asking ourselves, not asking ourselves, Kenyans knew that the problem is not the Constitution. If anything, the problem is lack of full implementation of the 2010 Constitution and the enforcement thereof of the laws. Because Ruto is doing whatever he wants, behaving unconstitutionally, just like his predecessor, Uhuru. Understand? So anyway, so Raila kept on coming, we should review the Constitution, we should review the Constitution, we should review the... Alafu tukakorogwa na hii mambo ya sijui nini, AU sijui nini. But all in all, I explained to you that the AU thing was payment. Was payment to Raila Odinga for accepting. To do what? To let Ruto stay as the president of the Republic of Kenya. That's why the Auditor General alisema milioni kadhaa imepotea. Bilioni, not million. And up to this day, we don't know how much the campaign of AU, how much money was spent. Like I told you, Raila was not going to AU. That whole ploy was to fool Kenyans in order to pay Raila so that Ruto can transfer money from the treasury to pay Raila payment for him agreeing to work with Ruto and to agree for Ruto to stay in power as the president of Kenya. Unaelewa? So he pretended that he was going to AU. But he knew he was not going to win. But anyway, let's fast forward because I want to get to Musalia, Mudavadi and this whole amendment thing. But Raila and Ruto and Uhuru, remember, the reason why I tell you even Uhuru is in this, remember, when Raila came from AU, who did he meet? David, whatever. What's his name? That guy who's a right-hand man for Uhuru Kenyatta. Walikaa wakasikizana, alafu wakakutana na Ruto after that. Okay? So they sat down and let's draft this NADCO. Let's implement it fully. Now that I'm not in AU. To continue, umeshanilipa. We've played this game. Nimejifanya tunaenda ninio ndio adialipe malipo. Like I say, the AU thing was it was meant to bring a confusion. Watu wafikiria ati Raila naenda AU so that it can justify Ruto allocating money, taking money from the treasury to pay for the so-called campaign of Raila Odinga. But in reality, it was the payment to Raila for agreeing to let Ruto remain president. So anyway, the talks continued. The talks continued. They were going to face the next step of implementing this NADCO report, which required the change of the constitution. Because remember, in this 10-point agenda, part of it was to do what? A creation of prime cabinet ministry, prime ministerial position, and some other cabinet ministers. What is the reason why they want to create these positions? Like I said, the whole point of creating this position is to benefit. So there'll be no losers in every election, because these greedy, corrupt, irredeemably corrupt politicians of Kenya, they've realized that they can rule over us for decades like they have, as long as they agree among themselves how they're going to loot the taxpayers' money, how they're going to plunder and plunder the wealth of Kenya. So they want to do it with less bloodshed. That's why they want to create this position. So if we go to election today, if Ruto wins, they can let Ruto win the second term. Kalonzo can be given prime ministerial position. Matiang'i can be given permanent cabinet secretary. Gachagua can be given leader of the opposition, office of the leader of the opposition. Unaona? If you do that, you've totally nullified. Hakuna mtu atapiga makelele kwa sababu kila mtu anakula. So there'll be this whole mchezo wa town, which is still going on right now with all this wanajifanya opposition. There's no opposition. Hakuna opposition. Okay? So let me take you to this now. So now, even listen to what Mudavadi said today in that Ninio when he was speaking. There's also a press conference when he said the next step to the NADCO implementation of the NADCO report will require a plebiscite, a change of the constitution, which requires a referendum. That's why he's saying we want to include an extra ballot paper for you to fill out if you're going to vote nay or yay. Unasikia? Are you following me? Yeah. Tuendelee kazi. I hope you're following through this. Like the video. Now, hear very well. Listen to me very carefully. So, this is the trick. Here is the trick now. Musalia Mudavadi says something very, 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 very important that Kenya should pay attention. Not important in the sense that it's going to benefit Kenyans. It's important because we have to do what? We have to be vigilant. These people, these workers of iniquity, these evil Kenyan political elites, these demonic people, you have to listen to what they're saying. So Kalonzo, it's not Kalonzo, Mudavadi Mudamba, the son of, is it Sospita, came out and said they shall not be, in fact, there might not be an election. Kutakuwa hakuna election. Hey, Ati we might not even have an election. Unasikia? Do you know how serious that is? Do you understand the gravity of that statement? Unataka kutuambia watu wamengoja 2027 watoe Ruto, alafu unasema ati we might not even have that election. Do you know how serious that is? But let me, my emotions aside, tuendelee mbele. He comes and justifies it by saying this. You know, we are acting outside the what? The Constitution. Good year, karibu sana. Like the video. We are acting outside the Constitution. Why? Because we missed on fulfilling Article 89 of the Constitution. The boundaries and elimination. Ile wana redraw mad boundaries, because in his argument, he says that the boundaries were supposed to be redone. It's always done after every, I think it's 12 years. So we missed it. The deadline was on, I think, March 6, 2024. Msimamo karibu sana. Weka like hapo. The delimitation or boundaries was supposed to happen last March 6th. But it never what? It never happened. Sindio? Kinyume ya sheria. Right? Right. So he's saying we are operating outside the Constitution because the last census that was taken ilikuwa 2019. Hey, nakwambia hii Kenya. I'm telling you. Wacha nisome kidogo. Haya. Juhudi anasema no election is extended by bloody Ruto to fit narrative of 70. Absolutely. Anasema since we did not have the delimitation, ile doing of the boundaries, which was supposed to be done by the IEBC by March 6, 2024. Haikufanywa. So that means, in his argument, he's saying, first of all, we don't have 290 constituencies. Okay? Which is required by law. As that is his argument. And the population have grown. So there's no way the IEBC can conduct a proper election if the populations have increased and some of them do not have representation, proper representation, by that argument. Hey. Now, the question I would ask Mudavadi Mudamba, the son of Mudamba, Sospeta, I think his father was called that, who worked for Moi. I would ask him this. Why didn't we have the IEBC in place to redo the boundaries as it is required in Article 89? In fact, he quoted Article 89 of the Constitution, 89.4, subsection 4. You want me to read it for you? I will read it for you. Nitakusomea saizi. Sai nitakusomea hiyo nini. I'll read it for you. So nataka nikusomee. Nitakusomea sai. Let me read it for you. Because Musalia is playing with people. Musalia. And Ruto. Haya. Ngojeni kidogo. Haya, twende. Delimitation of election units. Subsection 4 says, if a general election is to be held within 12 months after the completion of a review by the commission, the new boundaries shall not take effect for purposes of that election. Now, Let's go back to why we did not have the elimination of electoral units, or the ninio hawatukufanya hizo elimination haikufanyika. Remember, there was a huge debate at that time. What's his name? That this former IBC commissioner ambaye alikufa. What's his name? What's that name? Yule jamaa alikuwa na kipara. Not Kivuitu. What's this other person? From Western Kenya. Hata nimesahau jina yake. Mtu I've forgotten his name. Si mtu anikumbushe jamani. What is the name this guy who just passed away? The head of the IBC commissioner. Anyway, that guy. His time was coming to an end. Eh? Chebukati. Asante sana msimambo. Chebukati. Wakati wa Chebukati, his time at IBC was coming to an end. So before it expired, a raging debate was there in Kenya when people were saying, shouldn't we make sure that we have commissioners in place before time ya kina Chebukati? It's either we use Chebukati and the previous commissioners to take part in this the elimination of electoral units, whatever the case is, to overdo the boundaries tenor before their time expire, or we should choose a new commissioners, okay, before your time expire. That was the unakumbuka hizo siku. Guess who walikataa? Guess wakina nani walikataa? Aguambo Terengenye, Opio Wandayi. Walisema la hasha. Wakaenda maandamano. Wakasema the selection panel should have people from what? From ODM, Azimio, and other people. The president cannot handpick the selection panel by himself, while by law he's supposed to. Wakavuruga ikitu. Nadiko ikafanyika huko. Time lapsed. So the point I'm trying to say is this. You cannot refuse to obey the Constitution, because the Constitution was very clear as to the time frame in which this elimination is the boundaries. Zifanye to be quite defined by IBC. Okay? It gives 12 years. Now, kama the time was about to expire, we already knew the time was going to expire. But Azimio were very busy making a lot of noise about NADCO. They stopped the country and stopped Ruto and Musalia and the gang from choosing the selection panel, because they say they have to have their own people to be part of the process of choosing the new IBC commissioners. And that's why we had a delay. So what I'm trying to say is this in not so many words. You cannot delay justice. You cannot decide to disobey the Constitution, then come again and then start saying that we have a constitution crisis. Listen, kama sheria inasema unafaa ukule ugali ukule sapa before saa 1 usiku, lakini wewe ukangoja saa 1 ikapita, alafu unataka kukula saa 6 usiku, na ukiulizwa kwa nini unataka kukula saa 6 saa kula usiku, unasema ati we have a constitution crisis. Kwa sababu nilikuwa nafaa nikule by saa 1, lakini saa 1 imepita. So tuko na constitution crisis. Therefore, hatutakuwa na uchaguzi kwa sababu mimi nimekula saa 6, nakula saa 6 usiku instead of saa 1. You understand what I'm saying? You cannot refuse to obey the constitution then claim that there's a constitution crisis while you are the reason why we have this situation in the first place. Then you want to threaten Kenyans that we might not even have an election. Wewe Mudavadi, wewe Ruto, munacheza. I see what you're seeing. But let me tell you something. This is not about even Ruto. It doesn't stop with Ruto only. It is this political class. It is this what? Political class. Ni Ruto, Kalonzo, Gachagua, wote. Because this will benefit them. But one thing, and I want to say this before I even go on, I'll chambua this story in this issue later in depth. The reason why Mudavadi have started saying that, all of a sudden he's very clever. All of a sudden he cares about the constitution. All of a sudden he's quoting the Constitution, Article 89.4, saying how we cannot have an election in 2027 because we have a higher population and our boundaries haven't been redone as it is required by the Constitution. You see what I'm saying? It's a ploy to create a delay, because what I'm saying is this: Ruto have smelt a rat. Oh, shabastababa. Ruto ameangalia, intelligence imemkalisha chini na imemwambia Ruto, 2027 inaonekana hata ukijaribu kurig hii kitu inaenda mbaya. So start coming with hii mchezo kukoroga watu. Now it is being korogwa in a very careful, calculated, meticulous way. Unanisikia? It is being calculated in a what? Very calculated, meticulous way. How is that? Listen how Mudavadi chooses his words as a real demonic individual. Skia. Mudavadi such there, Mudamba. Alisema kasema, he had to throw in that, this is the part of NADCO. Nad what? NADCO. NADCO. Arrangement that we have. To unsuspecting person, unasema hiyo tu is this is illegally is wanasema siju mambo gani. Gibberish. Lakini he's throwing that NADCO to rope in the Luo Nyanza supporters, Raila supporters, Luos, because NADCO report, listen to me, NADCO report was an agreement between Azimio and UDA. NADCO was not a Kenyan agreement. And they understood that because Kenyans refused this mambo ya NADCO, the manner they changed the name and started calling it broad-based nonsense. Kwa sababu walikuja na NADCO tukasema, hii NADCO siya, there's nothing national, sijui nini. Hakuna, tumekataa. Wakaona hiyo jina is not fitting for everybody. Wakaigeusha. So Musalia Mudavadi is using this NADCO term to hint at the ODM, Luo Nyanza, And even Kalonzo, because Kalonzo, remember, Kalonzo was the first one who signed that report and took it to Raila and took it to who? Ruto. Mumesahau? You forgot? Mumesahau? Kalonzo was the head of the Azimio, part of the discussion. What were the negotiators? Kalonzo huyo. So nakumbuka vile alikuwa anagombana na nani? His former deputy party leader, secretary general. Vile alimwambia ati you'll never be a president of Kenya. Yes, it is a backstreet agreement. So Mudavadi, this conniving fox, amekuja hapo amevaa octave. Ile dinio ya Otorongo. If you want to know that somebody is a conman, any politician that wear that kofia kama ile ya Otorongo, conman. Raila alikuwa anaivaa conman. Mudavadi anaivaa conman. So wanaingia hapo wanatuambia, it's a coded word to tell this to tell these politicians. Ile nadiko vile tulisikizana, tunaendelea nao mbele. Tunaendelea nini? Mbele. Lakini in order to fanya hii nadiko, mpaka tuwe na uchaguzi, si uchaguzi tu wa urais na ugavana na sijui seneta na sijui wanabunge na ma MCA, mpaka tukue na referendum. Na hii referendum, remember, they want it because Ruto, I told you yesterday, Ruto controls the instrument, the personnel, the whole system of the IBC is fully 110% under Ruto's control. Na amejua vile atafinya hii button na ameshinda. Ndio maana he doesn't want a popular revolution. Anataka tu tuende, anaambia chukueni kura. Lakini ameona vile hii maneno inaenda hivi, bado naenda kushindwa. So, wacha nitume Musalia Mudavadi. Musalia Mudavadi akaingia akasema, mnakumbuka tulikuwa hatujafanya ile elimination ya county na tuangalie population iko imejaa namna gani, because there are some places where we don't have representation. We have a very big population now, and the constitution require 290 counties, constituencies or whatever. So tunafaa tufanye hiyo elimination kwa sababu right now we are operating outside the constitution. So with that said, that might mean after 2027 haiwezi kuendelea because we are already outside the constitution. Now if we are outside the constitution, we have to have some level of governance. That means Ruto shall continue being president. And for this process to take over, to happen, it might take an extra 2 years, which comes back to Gypsy Corner's point that it might fit that 7-year ninio ya Ruto. Alafu, akimaliza hiyo 7 years, atajiongeza 2 years. Alafu, within that 2 years, ana change constitution for another 7-year term. Kwa sababu ameangalia 2027 hapa, akaona anaenda kushindwa. There's no way. And if you think about it, like I asked yesterday, who in Kenya, ushapata hata mtu moja, hata uende ulize Rachel Ruto, do we need to change this 2010 constitution? Rachel Ruto will tell you no. The problem has never been the constitution. Never. Lakini Musalia amevaa ile kofia ya Otorongo. Watu wanavaa ile kofia ya Otorongo hii. I told you. So many. Wachana na watu wa ODM, makelele ya ODM. Hao wameshanuliwa wote. Wameenda wakina sijui Salah Okech. First of all, what kind of name is Salah Okech? I know Salah Mohammed. plays for Liverpool. Hakuna Salah Okech. Mtu came out from nowhere. Na yeye ndiye alikuwa mtu wa mwisho akionekana na Raila. Tumwangalie vizuri. Na amenona kweli, unaona ile video akicheza, pesa inalipwa. Okech. Na yeye sasa amekuja anatuambia before baba akufe, baba aliniambia in secret ati Sifuna ni mole. Na baba alikuwa anatuambia wazi wazi, Sifuna akiongea hiyo ndio position ya party. Lakini Okech ameingia na ile tumbo yake. Ashadunga nani sindano akakufa. Wewe Okech, wewe hata si jina yake sio Okech. Wewe anaitwa Abdullah. Huyo asijifanye. Mukae chonjo. Ruto wants an extension. Sasa ametuma Mudavadi. Sasa mtaanza kusikia ati tusome vitu. Let me tell you what people say. Hata nani Abdinasir alisema kitu hapa hata Abdinasir, wacha nisome Abdinasir anasema nini. Abdinasir said this. Muende kwa Twitter yake msome. Sorry, I don't have my computer. His Excellency William Ruto is neither mad nor foolish to have a constitutional referendum with the general election. 1, constitutional amendments are very unpopular with Kenyans. 2, constitutional amendments that creates new offices for politicians are death wishes for the incumbent. 3, such a proposal will unify the opposition, give them political momentum, and will be a popular rallying cause. 4, general elections are lost and won on the record and agenda of the parties. Constitutional amendments is a wild card that plays in favor of the opposed to it and against the incumbent. Nasikia? Jamaa, ndio nawaambia hapa. Mkae mstari wa mbele. Ndio nawaambia. This is a ploy. Ukiona any president who is facing an elections and is very unpopular and wants to start talking about amendment, that is a criminal. Huyo ni mkora wa hali ya juu. Mkora. Shetani bilisi, satani kabuti. Any president that wants to tinker with the amendment when he's facing the ballot, knowing he's very unpopular. Any administration that wants, when they're facing elections, and they want to start talking about, they might not be in elections because you're operating outside the Constitution. If you are operating outside the Constitution, then you should be out of that office immediately, starting from the president. Because technically, actually, nyinyi wanabunge mnafaa mkae nyumbani hata salary msipate. Kazi ilishachukuliwa. June 25th, 2024 tulishawatoa. You have no mandate. Hakuna mtu mnafanyia kazi. Hamna mamlaka. So if you're operating outside the Constitution, wewe nani? Mudavadi. Mwende nyumbani saizi. Hamna kazi. Because constitutionally, then you shouldn't be receiving any salary. I told you these people are perfect candidates for committee. Committee maximum. Where wanachapwa viboko 7 mchana na usiku. Wanakula ugali na matofali. Na wanalala kwa nyumba ya makuti. Na wamevaa kaptula ngutupu. Na wanalala kifua wazi. Na wanapigwa saa 6. Kila saa 6 usiku mpaka wapigwa ngumi. These people are criminals. Ruto, Musalia, Uhuru, Kalonzo, Gachagua, Karowa, Matiangi, yule mtu watawe, wanataka kumaintain system of corruption iendelee for the next 30 years. Na ikimaliza wapatiwe watoto wao waendeleshe. Utaona wanataka kugroom, sijui nilisikia mtu akisema ati Winnie anafaa Winnie should not sit anywhere without near politics. Winnie Odinga should not run for anything. She's not qualified to even be a watchman. Winnie Odinga should be dating Oscar Sudi in Kapseret, wakiishi kwa nyumba ya makuti. The politicians are used to the public because they allow them to go rogue. We don't question them, but instead some of us enjoy their bribes. Absolutely. Ndio maana nasema yule mtu alituroga maybe amekufa. So we cannot unroga hiyo urogi. We tend to think karibu sana Brother Benson, we tend to think that these leaders represent us. They do not. They do not. Gladys Wanga and Opiyo and I getting into a working arrangement with Ruto is not going to benefit the people of Nyanza. Uhuru Kenyatta getting into a working relationship, political relationship with Ruto is not going to bring maendeleo in Central Province. Kalonzo Musyoka getting into a relationship with Ruto cannot bring maendeleo in Ukambani. The evidence is there. Kalonzo amekuwa kwa serikali for 30 million years. Atuoli. Go look at Western. Enda Katundu angalie. Katundu vile iko. I saw Katundu magari zina sijui ilikuwa Katundu sawa kama Katundu. Hata magari zinakwama. And Uhuru has been the president. Babake alikuwa president, and they are billionaires, in dollar billionaires. Henda. Afadhali Moi alikuwa anajenga huko Kapsabet huko sijui huko Baringo. Afadhali Moi alikuwa anaangalia watu wao. So anyway, that is the trick that is going on here with Musalia Mudavadi. Wanataka kuanza kutuambia, and listen to me very carefully. Very soon you'll see in the media, there'll be a raging debate about the constitution, about whether we are in a constitution crisis, where we were supposed to take care of this delimitation issue in March 6, 2024, but we failed. So now what do we do? And the pro-government people will say, there's no way we can hold an election in 2027 because the IBC must first deal with that before we head to an election. Because the narrative that they want to push now is that we cannot have an election by 2027. IBC mpaka imalize kazi yao, and they need time. So it will take an extra 2 years. So 2029 huko ndio tuanze kuangalia mambo ya elections. Meanwhile, watapora. Ngoja. Kenya utafika airport. Hey. Hata Ruto ndiye anakuuzia njugu hapo kwa ninio. Anakuuzia njugu hapo kwa ninio, hapo kwa stand. Ameuza kila kitu. Nyinyi mnacheza. If you don't stand up now, not right about now, ngojeni. Utamka hivi. Utapata nyumba na shamba yako imechukuliwa ni ya serikali. I saw that carbon credit nonsense. Unasikia watu Narok huko wamechukua 1 million acres. Ati serikali imechukua for conservation. Conservation ya nini? Ati sijui climate, sijui nini. Nani? Haki sijui ni. I don't know what to do. Mimi nitawacha YouTube. Nitaanza channel ya kanisa. Hii nimeshindwa. I've been defeated. I've been defeated. There's hata mimi nimeshindwa. 1 million acres Narok na governor anasema ati it's for conservation. Yeah. Narok, where we know there's Ninio, precious metals. Anyway, I'm getting off Ninio, off topic. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, wacha nikaninio. Nimekasirika, Manchester United imeshinda, but anyway, that's another story for another day. Like I say, just to wrap it up, Musalia, Mudavadi, and Ruto are playing with fire when it comes to this constitution. Wanacheza. Yeah, nitaenda Shakahola hata mimi. Shakahola nitaenda saa hizi. I'm defeated. Nimeshindwa. Nitakuwa kama Panyako. Panyako wanandi wachukue bibi yangu, wanandi. Wachukue bibi yangu. Panyako is in the government, by the way. Ukiona Panyako, ndio maana mnaona Panyako anapiga makelele vile anapiga. Sio. Wacheni siasa bwana. Mimi hata mimi nimeshindwa. Chukueni. Ruto chukua. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, ladies and comrades. Watch me niende. I cannot. I'm laughing, but it's hey, subscribe, share, like, comment. Wacha nisalimia watu hapo. Good ya karibu sana. Deborah nakuona hapo. Brother Benson kama kawaida, and then mkasubscribe kwa Brother Benson. Very nice channel. Msimamo pia. Na all of you who have been here. Kama sijasema jina yako, munipigia pole. Kwa wale watakalia kwa repeat, like button, subscribe, share, comment, and do all that good stuff. Wacha nikakunywa chai bwana. Peace and blessings. I'm out. Yeah.